5 alien admirals boasted about their fleets and victories, confident no species could ever challenge them. They laughed at humans, calling them weak and insignificant. But one glimpse of humanity changed everything. Humans acted with courage, unity, and intelligence that no one expected. Defying predictions and shattering centuries of assumptions, what was thought to be a powerless species became a force that could rewrite the rules of the galaxy. Don't forget to subscribe to see more incredible stories of humans defying all odds. The chamber was older than most stars known to the galaxy, built in an age when the first empires learned to travel faster than light and decided they would never be challenged. Its walls curved like a shell, carved with symbols of conquest, treaties, and surrendered worlds. And at the center floated a circular platform where the 5 alien admirals now gathered, each representing a civilization that believed itself eternal. Admiral Keth of the Varn Dominion arrived first. His armored form surrounded by hovering data screens showing fleet numbers that stretched beyond counting, he had crushed 3 rival species in the last century alone, and he enjoyed reminding others of it. His voice echoed confidently as he spoke of order, control, and the natural right of the strong to rule. Soon after came Admiral Sura of the Elathi Combine, tall and elegant. Her species famous for strategy and political manipulation, she did not brag loudly like Keth. Instead, she smiled calmly, certain that her mind alone could dismantle any enemy before a single shot was fired. She believed wars were won long before battles began. The third to arrive was Admiral Threx of the Molkar Swarm, a massive being formed of shifting plates and glowing eyes. His people believed in overwhelming force, endless numbers, and total annihilation. To Threx, resistance was meaningless, and mercy was a weakness long erased from his kind. Admiral Vale of the Synod clans followed, wrapped in ceremonial robes and ancient symbols. His race prized tradition and honor, claiming they had never lost a war because their ancestors guided every decision. Vale spoke often of destiny, insisting the galaxy itself favored those born to rule Ovi. The last was Admiral Zyra of the Orinth Technocracy, a being of logic and calculation, partially mechanical. Her thoughts assisted by artificial minds running millions of predictions each second. She trusted numbers more than instinct and believed no event could truly surprise her. Once all 5 were present, the chamber sealed, and the council began as it had countless times before. With confidence, certainty, and shared arrogance, they spoke of borders secured, rebellions crushed, and emerging species placed under watch or erased entirely. Each admiral adding examples that reinforced the same conclusion. The galaxy was stable because they controlled it. When the topic turned to lesser civilizations, the tone grew almost amused. Primitive worlds were discussed like minor inconveniences, resources to be managed, labor to be extracted, cultures to be reshaped or forgotten. The admirals agreed that progress followed a simple rule. Advanced species ruled, weaker ones obeyed. It was then that the subject of humans briefly appeared, mentioned only because a distant patrol had logged unusual activity near a backwater system. The name itself caused little reaction. Humans were categorized as young, divided, and technologically behind, a species that fought among itself more than against external threats. Keth laughed openly, stating that such a species would collapse under real pressure. Threx dismissed them as potential biomass. Sura suggested they could be controlled through limited trade and internal manipulation. Vale saw no sign of destiny in them, and Zyra's projections placed humanity far below any threshold of concern. The council agreed quickly. Humans were not worth discussion. They were an example of why the current order worked so well. Countless species existed, but only a few were meant to command the stars. This belief had guided the admirals their entire lives, and nothing so far had challenged it. As the meeting continued, their confidence fed itself, each agreement strengthening the illusion that the future was already decided. They spoke not of if they would rule, but how long their rule would last, centuries, millennia, perhaps forever. None of them noticed the small anomaly hidden deep within the incoming data streams, a minor inconsistency flagged and dismissed by automated systems. After all, certainty leaves little room for doubt, and in that chamber, doubt had no voice. The council ended as it always did, with pride intact and assumptions unchallenged. 5 admirals departed, believing the galaxy remained exactly as they understood it, unaware that their certainty was already beginning to crack, unseen, unheard, and dangerously underestimated. The rumors began quietly, moving through military channels and intelligence networks as small notes that most officers ignored. Reports from distant sectors spoke of a young species called humans spreading faster than expected, settling harsh worlds that older civilizations had abandoned, surviving conditions that should have broken them. And yet these reports were always marked low priority. To the great empires, humans were still classified as primitive, their technology uneven and inefficient compared to established powers. Their ships looked rough and patched together, lacking the elegant designs favored by advanced races. Analysts described them as emotional, impulsive, and dangerously divided, constantly fighting among themselves over borders, beliefs, and resources. Within the admirals' fleets, junior officers joked about humanity, calling them noisy, reckless, and disorganized. Some described humans as a species that had barely escaped its own planet without destroying itself. The idea that such beings could matter on a galactic scale seemed laughable. Intelligence summaries reduced human behavior to simple flaws. They argued too much. They questioned authority. They took unnecessary risks. They wasted time saving individuals instead of focusing on efficiency. To the alien minds studying them, these traits were signs of weakness, proof that humans would collapse when faced with true pressure. Admiral Sura's analysts suggested humans were best handled through indirect control, economic pressure, selective alliances, and subtle manipulation of their internal conflicts. She believed humans would turn against one another long before becoming a threat to anyone else. Admiral Keth's commanders saw no value in restraint. To them, humans were a future problem that could be solved early with overwhelming force. A short demonstration of power would send the species back into fear and submission, ending any possibility of resistance. The Molkar swarm dismissed humans entirely. Their scouts reported that human colonies lacked the defenses needed to survive a full-scale swarm assault to Threx and his kind. Humanity was simply another source of territory waiting to be consumed. Admiral Vale's priests and historians searched human records for signs of destiny or prophecy and found none that impressed them. Human myths were chaotic, filled with failed heroes, tragic sacrifices, and endless struggle. Vale concluded that a species so focused on survival rather than glory was never meant to rule. Zyra's machines ran millions of simulations, projecting human expansion, conflict rates, and technological growth. The results always ended the same way. Humanity either stagnated, fractured into smaller factions, or was absorbed by larger powers. None of the outcomes showed humans becoming dominant. Yet the rumors did not stop. Patrols reported human ships operating far from expected ranges, moving through dangerous regions without support. Colonies were established on worlds with unstable climates, high radiation, or violent ecosystems, places that should have been unlivable. More surprising were reports of human cooperation, rival factions setting aside differences during external threats, military units protecting civilian ships instead of abandoning them, damaged vessels refusing retreat until all allies were safe. These details were often dismissed as emotional mistakes rather than strategic choices. Some analysts noticed that humans learned quickly from failure, adapting tactics after defeats instead of repeating them. They modified ships mid-mission, repurposed civilian technology for military use, and relied heavily on improvisation. These behaviors confused traditional models of warfare. Still at the highest levels, the admirals remained unconcerned. To them, rumors were noise. Every rising species showed brief moments of promise before collapsing under pressure. The galaxy was full of forgotten civilizations that once believed they were special. Humans were placed in that same category, watched but not feared, noted but not respected. Their reports filed away beneath more pressing matters, border disputes, resource claims, and political rivalries among the great powers. What none of the admirals considered was how close attention humans were paying in return, how carefully they observed alien movements, technology, and behavior, how every dismissal strengthened their resolve rather than weakening it. The rumors, though ignored, continued to grow, quietly spreading through the stars, carrying the first signs that humanity was not following the expected path, and that the label of primitive might soon proved dangerously wrong. The encounter happened far from trade lanes and borders, in a stretch of space most empires ignored because it offered nothing of value. No rich worlds, no ancient relics, no strategic advantage, just drifting debris and unstable energy fields that interfered with sensors, a place where mistakes could be fatal. A joint alien reconnaissance fleet moved through the region, confident and relaxed. Their mission routine: map anomalies, scan for unauthorized settlements, and move on. Their ships were large, advanced, and protected by layered defenses that had never failed them. Without warning, long-range sensors detected movement ahead, several small vessels emerging from the interference zone. The ships were clearly human, their designs mismatched and uneven, hulls patched with different materials, engine signatures inconsistent. Nothing about them suggested a serious military force. The alien commanders expected the humans to retreat immediately. Protocol dictated that younger species avoided contact with superior fleets, but the human ships did not turn away. Instead, they adjusted formation, spreading out while maintaining tight coordination. Communication channels opened. A human voice transmitted calmly, identifying the fleet and stating their intention to pass through the region. The tone was steady, professional, and showed no fear. This alone unsettled the alien officers. Warnings were issued. The humans were told to change course or face consequences. Yet the human formation held, engines flaring slightly as if preparing for impact rather than escape. The decision made no sense to alien logic. Scans showed the humans were heavily outnumbered and outgunned, their shields weaker, their weapons inferior. Every projection predicted their destruction if a battle began, and still they did not withdraw. One alien captain suggested firing a warning shot, not to destroy, but to teach. A controlled blast streaked past the lead human vessel, close enough to register on sensors, close enough to scare any reasonable opponent. The human ships reacted instantly, not by scattering, but by tightening formation. Defensive systems activated. Smaller craft moved to shield larger ones, and damaged shielding was rerouted manually. The response was fast, precise, and practiced. Then something unexpected happened. One human ship suffered a systems failure due to the energy interference. Its engine sputtered, leaving it vulnerable. The alien commanders assumed the humans would abandon it to save the rest. Instead, two human ships broke formation and moved alongside the disabled vessel, matching speed, extending physical connectors. Their crews working under fire risked to stabilize the ship, all while maintaining defensive alignment. The aliens watched in disbelief as the humans refused to leave one of their own behind, even when it placed the entire group at risk. This behavior defied established military doctrine across the galaxy. More warnings were sent, stronger this time, weapons charged visibly. Yet the humans still did not retreat. Once the damaged ship was secured, the formation shifted again, placing the weakest vessel at the center, protected on all sides. Alien tactical systems recalculated, confused by the human movements. The models expected fear, panic, or surrender, but none appeared. The humans did not advance aggressively, nor did they flee. They simply held their ground. Minutes passed in tense silence, weapons locked, sensors strained by the unstable region. Any misstep could trigger disaster. Finally, the human fleet transmitted again, stating they would continue their passage and had no intention of engaging unless attacked. The confidence in that message was not arrogance. It was certainty, as if the humans had already accepted the cost of whatever came next and were prepared to pay it. The alien commanders hesitated. Initiating an attack would mean unpredictable combat in a dangerous environment against opponents who clearly did not behave as expected. Risk calculations shifted. Uncertainty crept in. After a brief internal debate, the order was given to stand down. The alien fleet altered course, allowing the human ships to pass unchallenged. The decision was recorded as a tactical choice, but privately, many officers felt something else. As the human ships disappeared back into the interference zone, no celebration followed on the alien bridges. Instead, there was quiet, replayed sensor data, and unanswered questions. For the first time, the idea surfaced that humans were not reckless because they were weak, but because they had learned to function without certainty, to stand firm even when survival was not guaranteed. That single encounter ended without a shot fired, yet it left a deeper impact than many battles, because it revealed something the admirals had not considered. Humans did not measure strength the same way. And that difference made them unpredictable in ways the galaxy was not prepared to face. The footage arrived at the Council archives without ceremony, filed as routine encounter data, compressed and stripped of emotion. Yet once the admirals began to watch it, the chamber grew silent. The images showed the same human ships from the encounter, but now slowed, replayed, and magnified from multiple angles, revealing details missed in real time. The first thing noticed was damage. Human hulls were scarred, patched unevenly, and marked by old burns, signs that these ships had survived previous battles and disasters, instead of replacing them. Humans repaired what they had, adapting designs again and again, each scar a record of survival rather than failure. The footage shifted to internal views, captured by distant sensors and intercepted signals. Human crews moved quickly through narrow corridors, some areas dark, others flickering with unstable power. Alarms sounded constantly, yet panic was absent. Faces were focused, voices clear, orders short and direct. One clip showed a human engineer working in open space, tethered by a single line, sparks flying as they manually rerouted power through damaged systems. Radiation levels spiked, warnings flashed, but the work continued until the shield stabilized. Only then did the engineer retreat, collapsing against the hull, alive but exhausted. Another segment showed medics tending to wounded crew members, not in a safe rear section, but directly beside active control stations. Injured humans refused evacuation, choosing to remain at their posts, assisting however they could. One pilot flew with a damaged arm, guided verbally by another crew member. What unsettled the admirals most was the lack of hesitation. Humans did not stop to calculate odds in the way advanced species did. Decisions were made instantly, based on trust, shared purpose, and an acceptance of risk that no simulation could fully capture. The footage then replayed the moment the disabled ship nearly drifted out of formation. Sensors showed how close it came to total systems collapse. According to alien logic, that ship should have been abandoned. But instead, humans treated its survival as essential, not optional. Data overlays revealed resource allocation shifts. Power diverted from weapons to shields. Engines throttled back across the fleet to match the weakest vessel. Every ship accepted disadvantage so one could survive. This was not inefficiency. It was choice. The admirals exchanged uneasy glances as the pattern became clear. Humans did not value victory the same way. They valued each other, and that value translated into action under pressure. Another clip showed human communication channels during the standoff. There were no speeches, no grand declarations, just constant updates, reassurance, and shared awareness. Phrases like "stay with me, we have you," and "hold steady" repeated again and again, creating a web of connection stronger than any shield. Zyra's analytical systems flagged anomalies, human response times exceeded predicted limits, adaptability curves rose sharply during crisis rather than falling. Stress appeared to enhance performance instead of degrading it. The data refused to align with established models. Sura focused on behavior, noting that humans seemed to expect failure and loss, yet planned for it. They built redundancy not into machines alone, but into people. Skills overlapped, roles shifted seamlessly. No single loss caused collapse. Threx watched the footage repeatedly. His kind believed fear was the greatest weapon. Yet here fear existed and was ignored. Humans acknowledged danger but acted anyway, a concept the swarm had never encountered. Keth found himself unsettled by the silence after the encounter. The humans did not pursue, threaten, or celebrate. They simply continued their mission, as if standing against superior force was normal, even routine. Vale's priests searched the footage for signs of divine favor and found none. Yet something else disturbed them. Humans created meaning through action, not prophecy. Their faith was in each other, not fate. As the final frames ended, the chamber remained quiet. No one spoke for several moments. The glimpse they had been given was brief, incomplete, and limited to a single encounter, yet it challenged centuries of belief. This was not a species driven by technology or domination. It was a species shaped by struggle, trained by hardship, and bound by connection. The admirals realized they had not seen humanity at its strongest, only at its most honest, under pressure, unfiltered, and unwilling to break. That glimpse lingered in their thoughts long after the footage ended, because it revealed a truth none of them were prepared to face when everything else failed. Humans did not retreat. They held on, together. As the admirals continued to study the intelligence gathered from the human encounters, their confidence began to wobble. Patterns they had always trusted no longer matched the reality displayed by the humans. Every simulation and projection had predicted hesitation, breakdowns, or surrender. Yet the humans repeatedly acted against expectation, refusing to follow the rules of probability the galaxy had long relied upon. Reports showed humans thriving in situations designed to break lesser species. They adapted rapidly to environmental hazards, recalculated strategies in real time, and used limited resources in ways no algorithm had anticipated. Every new piece of data chipped away at the notion that humans were weak, primitive, or disorganized. The Council reconvened to discuss these anomalies. And while outwardly the admirals maintained their composure, privately, unease spread like a quiet virus. Keth, who had always boasted of absolute superiority, found himself questioning his own assumptions. The scenarios he once considered trivial now appeared risky and uncertain. Sura's analysts pointed out that humans seemed to excel in chaos, turning threats into opportunities, setbacks into advantages. Their unpredictability was not random. It was calculated instinct, honed through generations of struggle. Yet it could not be fully quantified or controlled. Threx grew frustrated, unable to reconcile the swarm's doctrine with the human behavior observed. His fleets relied on sheer numbers and overwhelming force. Yet humans had survived attacks far beyond their expected capabilities. They regrouped, repaired, and struck back in ways that ignored the swarm's entire understanding of warfare. Vale consulted historical patterns among conquered civilizations, looking for precedents that could explain the humans' resilience. Yet there was nothing. Every empire that had risen to dominate space had crumbled when pressed beyond limits. Humans appeared immune to that formula. Zyra's calculations grew more complex. Her machines attempted to simulate human adaptability, but predictions became unstable. Outcomes diverged wildly. No single model could encompass their actions. The margin of error was enormous, and every simulation suggested the humans were far more capable than initial analysis had shown. Even simple observations unsettled them. Humans collaborated in ways that were both intuitive and efficient. Small groups made instant decisions that preserved larger objectives. They seemed to anticipate one another's needs and weaknesses without explicit coordination, a form of intelligence that defied traditional measurement. Alien officers began to report unusual feelings of doubt during fleet planning exercises, their confidence shaken by the realization that any engagement with humans carried unknown variables. What had once been a simple calculation of odds now required consideration of factors that could not be predicted. More disconcerting were the human psychological traits. They endured extreme stress without breaking, prioritized loyalty over self-preservation, and consistently placed collective goals above individual survival. These behaviors did not fit any known model of alien behavior, and the admirals struggled to reconcile them with what they had long accepted as universal truths about strength and survival. Keth called for a review of past encounters with supposedly weaker species, comparing historical data with human outcomes, and the pattern became frighteningly clear. Humans were not merely resilient. They were adaptive in ways that challenged centuries of strategic doctrine. Every failure had been a lesson, every loss an opportunity, every victory the product of extraordinary coordination under pressure. Sura suggested caution, noting that a species this unpredictable could disrupt carefully laid plans across multiple sectors. Their influence might grow unnoticed until it became impossible to counter. The idea of underestimating humans now appeared reckless. Threx muttered about reassessing attack protocols, admitting that conventional force could no longer guarantee success, even against small human contingents. Vale quietly acknowledged that destiny, as he had understood it, could no longer be used to dismiss the humans, and Zyra adjusted projections to include a wide margin for human ingenuity, something her systems had rarely needed for any species. For the first time, the admirals faced the concept that humans' greatest strength was not in technology or numbers, but in their resilience, adaptability, and willingness to endure against all odds. The very traits they had dismissed as chaotic or inefficient were now recognized as strategic, powerful, and potentially decisive. Private discussions within the council began to shift, from dismissive laughter to serious deliberation. The humans' unexpected abilities forced the admirals to confront uncomfortable questions. Could a species so underestimated actually alter the balance of power in the galaxy? Could centuries of control and conquest be challenged by a civilization they had once deemed irrelevant? By the end of the session, certainty had been replaced by cautious curiosity. The council understood that they had misjudged humans, that their assumptions had been flawed, and that what had begun as a minor anomaly could evolve into a major threat. The galaxy, once considered stable under their rule, suddenly felt less predictable, and the admirals were forced to reconsider everything they had believed about power, strength, and survival. One admiral, eager to test humanity's limits, authorized a limited engagement. A small strike force was sent to a human settlement on a remote world. The fleet moved with confidence, expecting a simple demonstration of power that would crush morale and confirm superiority. They calculated every risk, every possible human reaction, and decided the humans would fold under pressure. The human settlement appeared modest from orbit. Clusters of buildings spread across uneven terrain. Defensive systems seemed minimal. Sensors detected only a handful of ships and scattered ground units. Everything suggested vulnerability, exactly what the admirals expected. As the strike fleet approached, the humans did not panic or scatter. Instead, they activated early warning systems, coordinated civilian and military personnel, and moved defensive units into positions designed to maximize coverage despite limited resources. Their response was immediate and disciplined, showing planning and foresight. When the first wave of alien weapons arrived, humans responded with unconventional tactics. Some ships feigned retreats to lure attackers into ambushes. Ground units sabotaged incoming munitions. Improvised shields were deployed in unpredictable formations. All actions executed with timing that seemed instinctive. One alien officer noted that human coordination was remarkable. The settlers anticipated attacks before they arrived, diverted enemy fire, and saved vulnerable units without sacrificing offensive capability. Their resourcefulness went beyond what simulations had predicted, and it forced the aliens to adjust mid-battle, something rarely required in engagements against weaker species. A small transport ship carrying supplies became the focus of the attack. Aliens expected the humans to abandon it, yet a team of human pilots engaged in a daring maneuver, weaving through enemy fire to protect the vessel. The pilots' decisions appeared impulsive, yet were perfectly calculated in execution, demonstrating courage, skill, and commitment. The aliens pressed harder, confident that numerical superiority would overwhelm human defenses. But the humans adapted, using terrain, weather, and unconventional weapons creatively. Ground units set up decoys. Ships used environmental hazards to neutralize superior enemy firepower. Every movement forced the alien fleet to rethink strategy. Several alien captains grew frustrated as their expectations failed repeatedly. Each human action contradicted the projections. Their adaptability was not random. It was a pattern of rapid assessment, instant decision-making, and collective focus, turning what should have been a quick victory into a prolonged struggle. Midway through the engagement, a key human command center was hit, power fluctuated, systems failed, and casualties mounted. But rather than panic, the humans immediately redistributed duties, improvised command channels, and continued to coordinate the defense. Their cohesion remained intact despite severe setbacks. Alien sensors captured this behavior and relayed it to the admirals, who watched in disbelief as humans prioritized rescue, repair, and continued defense over retreat or surrender, what the aliens considered irrational. The protection of lives at cost to efficiency proved devastatingly effective, sustaining morale and combat effectiveness simultaneously. By the end of the first phase, the alien strike fleet had suffered significant damage, miscalculations, and delays. Their losses were unexpected. The engagement cost more than anticipated, and the humans had not only survived, but gained ground in areas the aliens had assumed were lost. Threx was enraged, unable to accept that overwhelming power had been neutralized by a smaller, supposedly weaker force. Keth reviewed data repeatedly, realizing that assumptions about fear and retreat no longer applied. Sura analyzed patterns of human ingenuity, noting a level of foresight alien strategists rarely observed. Vale admitted that what humans lacked in formal technology, they compensated for with improvisation, unity, and sheer determination. And Zyra adjusted projections, acknowledging that standard calculations of risk and probability were unreliable when humans were involved. Even as the aliens retreated to regroup, the humans maintained operational integrity, repairing vessels, rescuing injured units, and continuing defense preparations as though the battle had only just begun. There was no celebration, no arrogance, only focus and persistence. The limited engagement, intended as a demonstration of alien superiority, became a costly lesson in underestimation, showing that humanity's true strength lay not in numbers or firepower, but in adaptability, courage, and cohesion under extreme stress, traits the admirals could neither fully predict nor easily counter. By the time the fleet returned to base, the admirals were forced to reconsider every assumption about human capability, realizing that small numbers, limited resources, and apparent weakness could be overcome by ingenuity and unity, and that future encounters could no longer be treated as routine, straightforward operations. For the first time, the Council understood that humans were unpredictable, resilient, and willing to endure unimaginable risk for survival and loyalty, and that this single engagement, meant as a test, had already changed the way they would view humanity forever. The aftermath of the limited engagement left the admirals unsettled, their pride replaced by a cautious awareness. They had entered the test believing they would dominate easily. Yet every calculation had failed. Every expectation had been challenged, and the humans had emerged resilient, disciplined, and unfazed by superior force. Keth reviewed reports repeatedly, unable to reconcile the outcome with his previous understanding of strength. He had relied on raw power, intimidation, and fear as tools of control. Yet the humans ignored threats, adapted instantly, and continued to act with purpose, showing no signs of panic, hesitation, or submission. Sura focused on their strategies, replaying intercepted communications and battle movements, noticing patterns of cooperation and foresight that no model had predicted. Humans anticipated enemy actions, improvised solutions, and maintained morale under extreme pressure. Each success building on the last, creating a momentum that could not be measured by conventional metrics. Threx grew frustrated, admitting to himself that overwhelming numbers were not enough, that sheer force was ineffective against opponents who refused to break. His simulations failed to predict outcomes, and his swarm tactics had been neutralized repeatedly by humans who understood how to turn disadvantages into advantages. Vale studied the cultural and psychological traits of humans, realizing that loyalty, shared purpose, and a willingness to endure suffering for others were more valuable than technology or firepower. Humans did not fight for conquest or glory alone. They fought to protect, to survive, and to uphold bonds stronger than fear. Zyra adjusted every projection, introducing new variables to account for human adaptability, resilience, and improvisation. Her machines struggled to simulate decisions that were both emotional and effective, a combination alien logic rarely accommodated, demonstrating that humans were unpredictable in a meaningful way. The Council convened to discuss the broader implications, and private conversations began to replace public posturing. The discussion was no longer about how to control or dismiss humans, but how to understand and anticipate them. Every assumption about their weakness had been shattered. Every model of conquest now seemed unreliable. The admirals began to recognize that human strength was not in brute force or advanced technology, but in their unity, flexibility, and determination under pressure. They thrived when the situation seemed hopeless. They adapted when conventional methods failed, and they remained steadfast when logic predicted collapse. Reports from other sectors confirmed similar patterns. Humans surviving disasters that should have destroyed them, repelling attacks with limited resources, rebuilding after catastrophic losses, and using ingenuity to overcome obstacles no other species could navigate. Each incident reinforced the reality that humans were unlike any species encountered before. Keth admitted that fear had begun to replace pride, that future engagements could not be approached with the same confidence. Sura noted that the unpredictability of humans made preemptive strategies risky. Threx acknowledged that swarm tactics might fail in ways he could not foresee, and Vale reconsidered his assumptions about destiny and superiority. Zyra's analysis suggested that humans could not be contained by conventional measures. Their behavior defied standard prediction. Their problem solving was rapid and unconventional, and their collective cohesion was a force stronger than any single weapon, making them a species whose potential impact could not be underestimated. As discussions continued, the admirals realized that humanity's true power was invisible until tested, that the qualities once dismissed as flaws, emotional connection, improvisation, resilience, were actually advantages in conflict and survival, and that these traits might allow humans to challenge even the most dominant civilizations. The Council's stance shifted from contempt to vigilance, from arrogance to careful observation, understanding that humans were no longer a species to monitor casually, but one to respect, anticipate, and perhaps fear, because the species they had dismissed had shown they could endure, adapt, and fight in ways the galaxy had never seen. For the first time, all 5 admirals quietly acknowledged that humans could not be defeated by simple force or dismissed by assumption, and that this revelation fundamentally altered their view of power, hierarchy, and survival in the galaxy, signaling that future encounters with humanity would require caution, respect, and careful planning. The realization settled like a weight in the council chambers. Humans were unpredictable, united, and willing to endure risks no other species would consider, and that their presence alone had begun to change the way the galaxy's most powerful leaders thought about control, dominance, and the limits of certainty. The council reconvened quietly, the mood markedly different from any previous meetings. The 5 admirals no longer spoke with casual pride or certainty. The humans, once dismissed as insignificant, had forced a reconsideration of every assumption they had about strength, control, and survival. Keth opened the session, reviewing the latest reports from multiple human systems, each one confirming the same unsettling pattern. Humans surviving impossible conditions, repelling attacks with ingenuity, and demonstrating cohesion and resilience far beyond what the galaxy expected from a young species. Sura analyzed strategic implications, noting that humans could not be contained by conventional methods. Their ability to adapt in real time made preemptive strikes risky, and any attempt to manipulate internal divisions might fail because loyalty and shared purpose were stronger than fear or incentive. Threx, usually impatient and aggressive, admitted reluctantly that his previous reliance on overwhelming force was now questionable. The humans had shown that even inferior numbers could counter superior technology if used with discipline and adaptability, a concept alien empires rarely encountered. Vale considered the cultural and historical consequences, realizing that humans' way of defining strength through unity, courage, and endurance challenged long-held beliefs about destiny and superiority. Their persistence under extreme pressure created a new model of power, one the admirals could not ignore. Zyra's calculations became more complex as she attempted to simulate future encounters with humans. Every model produced unpredictable results. The species' combination of intuition, improvisation, and social cohesion defied algorithms, highlighting that humans were not just a minor nuisance, but a variable that could shift galactic balance. The discussion turned to tactics, and for the first time, the admirals debated with genuine caution rather than confidence. They reviewed protocols for engagement, assessed fleet distributions, and considered observation strategies instead of immediate action, each aware that a misstep could prove costly. Keth noted that fear had replaced pride, a quiet but persistent recognition that humans were capable of creating outcomes no one had foreseen. Sura observed that ignoring or underestimating them could no longer be justified, and Threx admitted that his usual reliance on brute force might now be dangerous. Vale proposed that the Council formally adjust policies toward humans, suggesting that observation, intelligence gathering, and measured engagement should replace assumptions of inferiority. Zyra confirmed that predictive models must be updated continually, as human adaptability made static strategies ineffective. The admirals discussed psychological aspects, recognizing that humans' willingness to face extreme danger for each other created a kind of resilience. Alien species did not understand. Their focus on collective survival, loyalty, and ingenuity made them unpredictable and formidable, traits that could not be measured in weapons or fleet size alone. Reports of human expansion into hazardous systems without apparent fear or hesitation reinforced the idea that their ambition and courage were intrinsic, not driven by ego, technology, or numbers, but by a fundamental determination to endure and thrive under adversity. Each admiral privately reevaluated previous assumptions, recalling moments in past encounters when human decisions had defied expectation. Realizing that underestimating humans had been a grave mistake, the species' unpredictability made them both fascinating and dangerous. The Council concluded that the galaxy's previous order, maintained through assumed superiority, was no longer certain. Humans represented a new variable, one that could disrupt careful plans, alliances, and dominance structures. Their presence demanded vigilance, respect, and strategic reevaluation. Plans were set to monitor human systems more closely, develop new simulations, and avoid direct confrontations without careful consideration. Every decision reflected the understanding that humanity's potential impact could be far greater than previously imagined. For the first time, all 5 admirals accepted that humans could not be ignored, dismissed, or underestimated, that the species had shown an ability to endure, adapt, and challenge expectations in ways that changed the galaxy's strategic landscape. As the session ended, a quiet consensus emerged. Humans were not merely a young species learning their way. They were a force defined by resilience, loyalty, and ingenuity, capable of influencing galactic events far beyond what anyone had predicted. And the admirals left the chamber with the understanding that the era of certainty had ended, replaced by vigilance, respect, and a new, cautious acknowledgement of humanity's potential.